You are now listening to the I Think I Love My Wife podcast. And this is your best friend's best friend, Chidozie Okafor, ready to take you on another journey. Are you with me? Because I'm ready. Let's get it. In this episode, we explore the art of shooting your shot, examine the categories that women are often put into, uncover the things that hold men back from proposing, and discuss the role of intimacy and vulnerability in a relationship. So I'm here with my good friend, Brandon. I've known this guy for a long time, recently married. I've known this guy since the days in college. So
15 years.
Yeah, it's been a minute. And so happy to have him here, happy to be in the lab with me and talk about his story and his relationship and how he's gotten to the point he's gotten to. So before we get started, like every show, I like to start it with a toast. And so today, I want to toast it to love, great stories, and the lessons that we learned to it.
And we also want to toast to podcasting. I tend to listen to 5 or 6 different podcasts during my work hours, just to general information, sports, knowledge of current events. And I'm always marveling at the work that goes into it and the insight that's provided and just the skill level and talent it takes to pull this off. So cheers to that.
Cheers to that. And this was Glenfiddich 12. I've had a lot of different whiskeys, but this is pretty good.
As you get to know me on this podcast, I don't be buying myself no Glenfiddich. I'm more of a Maker's Mark kind of guy.
You're actually more of a Wells guy.
Keep it simple.
All right, so let's get started. Let's let the people know more about you and your relationship, and see where you got started, and so they can understand just some overall context for who you are and your situation. So how long have you known your wife?
I've known my wife for 4 years and 2 weeks, 1 day, and a couple hours.
You better than most.
Yeah, well, I mean, it helps at the 4-year anniversary of us meeting. It's also the day I proposed to her. It's also happened in May 24th, so it's really not that far off. So
no, that makes sense.
I can keep up.
So speaking of proposals, how long did you guys date before you proposed?
I proposed to her exactly 3 years from the day to the day that I met her.
Gotcha. Okay, and so what do you do for a living?
I'm a technology risk officer.
You work at one of the larger banks in the country, right?
I work at one of the bigger mofos in the world.
Okay. And what does your wife do?
My wife is a speech therapist.
Gotcha. And so when we look at your parents, I know your parents, they've been married for how long?
My parents have been married. It'll be 38 years in December.
Cool. And your wife, their parents still together?
Her parents are don't say still like they're going to divorce. They're married, happily married. They're going on 40 years, 39 years. It'll be, I think, 40 years next year.
See, I got like 70 years under your belt in terms of guidance.
Yep, I'm pushing 80. Yeah, so 77, 78 years.
So when we look at your relationship, both you and your wife come from both families, mother and father in the picture and around.
Yes.
Gotcha. And do y'all have any children?
We don't have it.
I know the answer, but just so the people know.
Not that I'm aware of, unless it's something I need to know.
You don't got to raise your voice because your wife in the other room. So I want to just dive right into it. How did you meet your wife? What led you to her, to approach her? Give us a rundown of that story.
So it was the Margarita Meltdown. It was in Bishop Arts.
So for those that don't know, Bishop Arts is like a up and coming part of Dallas.
Yeah, swanky, like old Oak Cliff, new swanky
the nicer
part of DFW.
The nicer part of Oak Cliff, not the Oak Cliff that's my hood part of Oak Cliff.
Right. So at this event, it was a margarita tasting event. So I get there, I think that was actually the first time, side note, that I ever used an Uber. So that's a useless side note, but I'll throw it in there as well.
And we're old.
Yeah. So, I'm tasting margaritas. The margaritas are thoroughly mediocre. I'm slightly upset. I'm in line to get a margarita, and this young lady with a hat on, skips in front of me, and she knows she skips, and she knows I noticed that she skipped. So she just kind of looks at me. She tries to give me that little side-eye thing. And so, I'm thinking she's cute. Let me try to holler at her because she skipped. So I talked to her.
Shoot your shot.
I shot my shot. That's all we can do in life is shoot your shot and hope that you make it. So I asked her name. She started questioning me, asking me if I had kids. I got a crazy ex-girlfriend.
Gave you the rundown up front.
Yeah, all this stuff, all this crazy stuff. And I'm like, okay, you don't need to know me, all that about me. So ultimately, I got her phone number. I think sent her a text that next day. I think I called her. So I met her on a Sunday. So I texted her on Monday, which was Memorial Day. And then on Tuesday, I think I called and we talked for the first time. There were good vibes. Ultimately, at the end of the day, man, she was cute. And I mean, I didn't know where it was going to go. But I was like, okay,
let's see what happens. Take
her to Kona, see what happens.
Took her to Kona. Did you take it for happy hour or you took it for
looking back at our situation, that was a early sign that I really thought this girl was different because I didn't take her on happy hour. And if you know anything about me, you know that I'm really trying to get on this special and go to happy hour. But, she enjoyed her barbecue pizza. I ate like half of it. We had great stimulating conversation and we wanted to know more and we wanted to explore and learn more. So I think that was the advent of it all.
Gotcha. And so taking a pause from there, I've known you since college and we've done some crazy things as it relates to just being young guys and as it relates to our interactions with women.
Right.
And so you're a little bit removed from college days.
Yes.
And walk me through, what was your experience with dating leading up to meeting her?
Dating was really just something that you kind of casually did, right? Like I think theoretically in your mind, you tell yourself that you want to get married. I want to have this family, but when you look at it practically, you look back, you ask yourself, am I taking all the right steps to potentially get there? So I think the one thing about me is and to use the basketball analogy, I cannot make a shot if I don't take it. So my theory is I am always going to be willing to shoot. I'm not shooting every shot, but within reason, I am going to shoot the ball and I'm not worried about missing it. I'm more concerned with trying to make it.
Gotcha. And when you say you're not shooting every shot, but you're shooting a lot, are these high percentage shots? Are these half court shots? Like what kind of shots are you shooting?
I think for me, I take a chance on myself, right? I've never met anyone that I didn't think, or I've never been in a situation where I didn't think I can conquer it, right? Is that potentially a flaw in how I think? Possibly, but I think that's just the mentality that I had that I could tackle and go after and do anything that I really wanted to do. I guess the thing I like to say is I play to win rather than playing not to lose.
No, that's fair. That makes sense. And so I would imagine there's a level of success in each of those shots that you shoot. How would you say the women's interaction with that? If you're shooting these shots, you don't know if it's going to go in. It might go in, and the woman's receiving it all as if, this guy's interested. What has been your, I guess, encounter with them or their reaction to it, especially the ones that were successful? And also, on top of that, what made it different with your now wife?
Luck.
Why do you say that?
Timing. I mean, at the end of the day, all of this is some of it's a numbers game, but I think at the end of the day, you just never know. You really just never know. And so the idea, and I'll just lay it out like this. The idea that I did something instinctively different or right in the situation that landed me or that created the marriage that I'm in now is a false pretense. It's just not true. It's, that was my day. That was God putting me in a situation. That was God putting her in that place. And that was us, not blowing up that opportunity that was in front of us. So I think oftentimes in life, people have opportunities. They don't flesh them all the way out. They'll run away or they'll quit on that idea or that person. I'm using ideas as replacement for a person. They'll let that person walk away without truly vetting out and understanding that perfection doesn't exist. The perfect woman doesn't exist. The perfect man doesn't exist. And some of this stuff you're going to have to just work through.
We got plenty of time to talk about dating, what will allow for the opportunity for people that want to understand how that works or how it could work for them given the situation that you're in. And I would like to say, successfully overcome that to be married. Just because you get married doesn't mean that's success, because I recognize that's a day-to-day, month-to-month process to continue to make it work. All right, so moving along, what would you say makes your wife special?
So I think every man should have the standard answers to this question, right? Like, you think your wife is beautiful, you think intelligence matters. I think my wife is incredibly smart. I think she's incredibly hardworking. I know the family she comes from, so I know her background. I know the heart that she emits. But at the end of the day, it's all about when you think about connecting with someone at the level that when you decide to marry them, it's ultimately about how that person makes you feel or how you feel about that person. So what the most special thing about her is that on a day-to-day basis, she's the only like thing that I legitimately think about and care about 100% of the time. How she feels, what she's going through, how she's thinking, did she eat her lunch, all of this random stuff that really it'd be easier to just not have those burdens. But at a certain point, the concept of love is not something you can really control. And if you can't control it, then you're not in love. And so my feeling for my wife is something that I can't control. And the general nature of her being is something that drives me. And even when I'm upset with her and I want to turn that off, I can't, because she matters more than anything. And once you get that feeling, it's about that time. You need to make it biblical.
And would you say like that feeling, because people, women talk about, oh, I didn't feel nothing, I didn't have the butterflies. When you talk about the things that you just mentioned, are those a feeling you get over time? Is it a decision that you make that you want to, given the information that you know? Is it part of the responsibility, as whatever the situation is? I'm a man, so this is what the responsibility and the burden that I take. And I'm asking this because I'm trying to differentiate, what are some of the aspects of it that come with the territory, and what is some of the I guess nuances that make her unique?
Right. So I'm gonna push back on the pretense of the question, right? And when I say that, because a feeling is a feeling, it's not something that can be quantified, right? Like as a person who works for a big bank and is a math nerd, is into the data and tracks everything that I do in an Excel file, multiple Excel files. I want to be able to quantify or be able to put on paper and align that to a relationship. But the reality is, you feel what you feel when you feel it. And I think the thing that we often miss in this world, and that men often, the mistake they often make, is that they try to reject that feeling, or they try to quantify that feeling, or they try to rationalize that feeling against tangible things, when the concept of love and being married to a woman is not really a tangible thing that can be explained, because this person is not your flesh and blood. Because her parents had that feeling in less than a year. My parents grew up in the same little small town, and they got to know each other, and that bond got to be built over the course of adolescent years, but it was built over the course of 17 or 18 years. For my wife and I, while I can't adequately pinpoint the exact day or moment, right? Because a feeling doesn't work like that. If you could pinpoint an exact moment when a feeling changed, then it would be something you quantified, and that's not how feelings work. But I got to that point, and I got to that point probably a lot sooner than she realizes or wants to understand. But there's still that part of being a man that, makes you think about the tangible stuff, right? You try to attach, like, am I financially ready? How much debt are we going to accumulate with the wedding, et cetera? All those things.
Can I do better? Is there something out there that exists?
Right. And the reality of it is, at the end of the day, none of it matters, man. Like, if you got that right woman, like, you're going to figure it out, and they're going to hold you down. And the comfort of that person trumps all of those tangible things that men often think about, that they probably should, push to the side.
Got you. And I want to dig deep into some of the challenges you guys faced as you guys were dating and going through that journey. But if you can, understanding you said it's a feeling, this podcast is called I Think I Love My Wife, because I firmly believe there's a point where you're given certain experiences, you're affirming yourself to some of those feelings that you probably knew existed, and you're challenging them, and then there gets to a point where you're like, I think I love this woman, and affirmation of it. And so when did you hit that moment where you were like, I think I love this woman, and how did you know that you loved her?
You know that you love, so I'm going to answer the second part of that question first. You know that you love someone when inherently you cannot control how you feel about that person, right? So you get
probably how that person makes you feel in reactions,
how that person
to
makes you
things.
feel, right? That's a part of it too. But there's a general sense of, man, like it comes out, like, love is really evident when you're having those bad moments, or you're pissed off, and that person legitimately pisses you off, but all you still want to do for them, and you still want to make them happy, and you still tangibly want to see the fruits of your labor with that person. So I think that's the love piece. But I think about it a year in, I was completely so. Like this is not something I don't want to have a life that does not involve her. I don't envision that life. I don't see that life. And it just is not something. Now, theoretically, I think looking back, we could have been married like for 2 years now, because at that point you need to, make it happen, man. Like, what are you doing?
So that's what I was about to ask you that. So you said you've known her for 3 years?
I've known her 4 years now.
4 years. You knew a year in. It wasn't like you guys have been friends for a minute.
Right.
Like y'all met, started dating, or you were interested in that romantic capacity.
Right.
And so a year into that, you knew, okay, this is my person. So at that point, were you ready to get married, or why didn't you pull the trigger? What were you waiting on?
Makes too much sense. That's the problem. I mean, when you think about it, you look back. I mean, just think about our collegiate experiences and the crazy nights, kicking it or whatever. You look back and you're like, just practically, if I just thought like for 20 seconds, that was what we did was stupid.
It was fun, though.
And it was fun, right? and not saying that, not getting married or not proposing it was stupid, but practically looking back, like, what are you waiting for? Other than, oftentimes we create these false narratives about all the things that we need to get done in the place we need to get to before we can, check this box. And at the end of the day, like, what are you waiting for? And the only thing I did was create an opening for it not to work. Like, what if she was ready in 2016 and, I knew at that point that I loved her to the point where I didn't want my life without her. But what if she was like, either you're going to propose to me or I'm going, I don't have time for this. I'm too old for this mess. And like, move on. Like, what would I have done in that situation? And luckily that didn't happen. But at the end of the day, right, like sometimes you got to just go for it and you got to do it. And because there may not be another chance. The assumption that you're going to have that opportunity in the future is a dumb assumption.
No, and that's real. That makes, like you said, in retrospect, that makes a lot of sense. But I think everybody doesn't operate like that, or doesn't operate in retrospect. And so for context, when you met your wife, you were in your about 30, close to 30.
29.
29. So you're almost 30. And your wife is probably, what, 2, 3, how many years? She's older than you.
She's a year and some change older than me.
So she's in her early 30s
right.
at the time. And I think oftentimes, what happens is women have this mindset, or they kind of already know what they want. And so, in my opinion, at times that kind of puts a hindrance on the relationship, because they're pressuring it to go some way, or they're trying to force it to go in a direction they have in their mind they want it to go. And the guy may be on that journey, but not be moving at the speed they want. And certain actions can kind of prevent the progress from proceeding.
Right. But how much more would we have saved on a down payment for our first home if we had been consolidating our incomes for 2 extra years?
No,
right? Think about it like that. That's another practical application of it.
It makes total sense. But I guess where I was going there was like, when you think about your wife through that journey, I would imagine, because I know her, that like she was ready, she was looking, she wasn't like, I'm just dating a date. How was her, like, did you feel pressure? Was there any point where it's like, hey, bro, time is ticking, or hit you with the what are we doing question? Like, how was her, reaction to the journey, knowing that like she wanted to get married? That was something that she was looking for.
Pressure's not the right word. I think at a certain point you realize, look, man, put up or shut up. And I think I got to a point where I had to constantly and repeatedly give her the assurance that your day is coming. It's going to happen sooner than you think, and this is going to work out for us. And just trust me and be patient. And luckily, her heart and what she does for a living, and her general mentality allows for her to be that way. So
she trusted you in that.
She trusted me, and I think that love connection is something you can feel 2 ways, right? Like, she also felt like that this man loves me and he wants to be with me, and I feel the same way. It's gonna happen when it's supposed to happen. She also knows that I'm an incredibly methodical person. I like to plan things out. I like to be very deliberate about what I'm going to do.
But 2 years after like you met, and then you knew within a year, and then it took another year and a half.
Story wouldn't be as interesting, man.
It wouldn't be, but
right. I should.
What were you waiting on, or what was? Because what I want people to understand, and is that it's not as simple as like, oh, this person's great,
right?
I love this person. Okay, next step. If you believe in marriage, or that's a goal, getting married. So what were some of the things that were holding you back from just pulling the trigger?
I would say financial insecurity. I would say general fear. I think all those things are factors. I think we try to. I think a lot of times what men try to do is we try to project ourselves as these part of the masculinity is being able to be resistant to all the outside forces, societal forces, the pressure, all of those things. In reality, we're emotional creatures as well. We may show that emotion in a
Guys
different way.
do have feelings.
Right. We do. We just show that emotion in a different way. And that's what my wife often says, you don't have feelings. And I'm like, I do have feelings. Like, you don't see how I treat you. You don't see how I react when I know you're having a bad day. Like, you don't see how I communicate to you when something happens at work and I'm pissed off because somebody pissed my wife off. Like those are my, communication of those feelings. I'm just communicating and I'm sharing it in a different way. But ultimately it was my insecurity, right? Like at the end of the day, that financial insecurity, like I can't bring this amount of student loans. This woman ain't got no student loans and I'm coming in here with,
she got her own house.
She got her own house. Like it was some of it that ultimately is what it's about. That once you get past that insecurity and you realize that, the whole point of this is to have somebody to pick me up. Like I don't want our relationship to be about need. I want it to be about, hey, we both did pretty good as singular individuals. We both, she did very well for herself. She's one of the most responsible people I've ever met. And I think I do pretty well as well. But what goes along with that is that we didn't. So ultimately, at the end of the day, we didn't need each other. But our lives are so much better with each other because that companionship, that interaction, the goofy, silly stuff that we do together, just the feelings that we have about each other are so strong that every day I enjoy waking up next to her. And as I've told her, I may not ever effectively communicate that to you in words, but just know that you are the best thing that ever happened to me. And I mean that genuinely. And, if someone were shooting at you, I would jump in front of that bullet. And I don't know why I would jump in front of that bullet.
Just be a reaction.
It would be a reaction, but it would also, some people would say I'm jumping in front of that bullet because I love you. For me, maybe I'm jumping in front of that bullet because I don't want to live my life without you. Rather make you do it.
You try to make me tear up. No,
that's selfish. It's selfish as hell.
Yeah, it's selfish.
But it's reality.
We are selfish people to some degree. And so you said something that made me think about. So when you met, I'm trying to pull it back because people listening to this are at different stages. And so when you met her, would you say you're like, yo, I'm trying to get married? That's like, I know that probably might have been the goal, but was it just the same, like, I'm shooting my shot, we'll see what happens? Or was it like, I'm trying to, like, was it her that kind of got you to that point? Or was the initial contact, it was like, this could go whatever. It could be just for fun. It could be just dating. It could be.
Man, when keeping it real goes wrong. So I'm just going to keep it real. So I think in the general sense, when you meet women, you kind of put them in boxes. You got the ones, okay, I'm gonna have to take this one on some dates. Like ultimately, I'm looking to smash at some point. But
you can say we're adults.
Yeah, I'm looking to have some sex, right? So you put women in boxes. So you got the women like, okay, she might be a little freak. She kind of got a nice little body or whatever. She cool. Like I'm gonna try to get at her, see if I can knock that down. Whatever. Then you meet other women where it's like, man, this woman just has like this aura about her, like just something just classy. And I think the connection is that she reminded me of my mother, in a lot of ways, just in how she carried herself. She had a hat on. She had like these dancer legs that I could pick out. She had like this long hair that I could. It was my thing. It was like, this woman she reminds me of the black. Like I grew up with brothers and a dad, and the only woman my understanding of femininity and of what a woman should be is almost solely aligned through my mother. So in a lot of ways, as we started communicating more often, I started to realize this woman is a lot like my mom.
So what I'm hearing from you, a lot of that was dictated by how she carried herself
Absolutely.
And her interactions with you to help you figure out what bucket you put her in terms of how you want to interact with her.
Right. So we went on our first date. I think it was the Saturday after we met on a Sunday. It was Memorial Day weekend. We went on our first date that following Saturday. And at that point, I knew, okay, this is not the kind of girl you're going to just smash and move on. This is the kind of girl, like, that could potentially be your wife. I don't know if she's going to be my wife, but she's going to be somebody's wife at some point.
She made you put some work in.
It's not even that she made me put work in. It was just how she carried herself, how her attire, how she dressed. Just the old classic black woman that I have grown to envy and to love. She just checked all of those boxes. Conversation was not very superficial. It was very direct, but it was also it proved to me that she just wasn't someone that had multiple degrees, but that she was a person who had the intellect and had the integrity and the insight to be the mother of my children one day. And you see all of that early on. Like you still, it's been a week. Like I'm not going to propose to the woman, but she checked enough of those boxes to where I had to know more.
Gotcha. And so, when you actually popped a question, were you 100 on a 1 to 10 on a 1 to 10 scale or a 0 out of 100 percentage scale? How confident were you that she was the one when you proposed?
Oh, but I mean, so it's 100%. I would have said 110%, but 110% doesn't actually exist, guys. That's just mathematically impossible. just for the record, when someone says they're giving you 110%. Make fun of them and tell them that that's not possible. They cannot possibly give more than what they have.
Cool.
And you only have 100%.
But you know, like we all come into relationships, whether it is prior experiences, how we grew up, thinking. You know, I guess in our cases, my wife or my person is going to be X. Or
right.
My wife is going to. I want my wife to do these things. I want. Whether it's to hold me down, whether it's to cook, whether it is to make X number of amount of money. So how did that sync with what you got at the end of it?
So I think I got enough of what I need. I think ultimately that's what you're looking for. So I think when you go in setting those expectations, especially when you make them very tangible, I got to have a woman that can cook. Well, I mean, good luck with that, buddy. A lot of women can't cook these days. This is not nice. It's
so unfortunate.
I mean, it is what it is, right? Like my wife has explained to me why like cooking ain't really her thing, right? Like I understand the origin of it. I'm cool with it. My mom taught me at a very early age. She was like, "Son, you ain't gonna meet no woman like me. You need to learn how to cook for yourself."
She said those words, "Son,
she
you
said
ain't gonna
those exact words. Like she was like, "You need to learn how to cook for yourself." And I want my kids, because I mean that's what a mom does, especially a mom raising kids born in the 80s, right? Like I want my kids to be fed. That was her primary task, right? To make sure that we were taken care of within the home. So I think you adjust those things, right? Like I think ideally I would have wanted a woman that could cook, right? I would have wanted, but I didn't get that from a certain perspective. My wife knows I make fun of her. I mean, she can cook certain things. She's come a long way. She puts in the effort. She puts in the work, and that's what's most important. But it came so many other ways. I think I got a lot more of the personality that I probably need, the person who their gentleness and their kindness rub off on me in a way that probably is a lot more than any expectation I could have set for what I was going to achieve or receive from my mate.
Gotcha. And so when you think back at it and think about just when you were dating, probably even before you met her, what were some of the things that you would say you place a value on or thought were important while you in a relationship that you realize now you're married, you guys are working on it, that's just not that important?
Money.
And what do you mean by that?
Money. Kanye West put it best. Having money is what did Kanye West? Having money is not everything. Not having it is, right? So we're not in a place where we don't have money, like where we're broke. We not both in here pulling in $35,000 a year. We do okay. Did I envision that I was going to marry an educator who was going to make what educators make and was going to be grinding as hard as my wife grinds? Nah, I was thinking I'm going to meet some young lady who went to business school and pulling in, her standard 6-figure salary, and we're going to pool that money together and we're going to just be kicking it, right? We're going to have bread to do what we want. And not that we don't. My wife is incredibly responsible. She has saved. She does not waste money on lucrative things. She's a homeowner. She has investments. Like the trade-off was I didn't get that person who was bringing in that 6-figure salary, but I did get a person who is so responsible to where we don't have to even really have hard financial conversations. They're very easy. We both know what we're working with. We both know what we're bringing in, and we are working together. I make more money than she does, but I also have a lot more debt. So we've used the tools we had to really to make sure that we're aligning our principles in the best way, and that we're spending our money in the most effective way, and that we're investing in the right places. And because of that, it's all gravy.
Anything else that you said that you thought was important that you realized is just like that was dumb, or that was stupid, or that was
not that was stupid. The whole cooking thing is an overrated thing that men often go back to. I think one thing that was made more apparent to me the importance of is family, right? Like just meeting people's family, meeting parents, understanding where a person comes from, understanding their background and why they are the way that they are is so important. So that was something that I probably underrated as an important factor, but I got to know what was and probably is a very important factor, and it explains so much, and I guess it creates such a clear picture as to why someone is the way they are and what they're going to be and how they're going to work through challenges that are to come down the road.
And so, if you were your wife, how would you answer that? How do you think she would answer that question?
I have no idea. Give me some categories, right? Like throw some categories at me, and I'll tell you.
How much? If we think about like I like to say dumb stuff. The dumb stuff women say, because me back in the day, I would tell women like, hey, over time you're gonna trade in height for honesty, and right. So like
But that's not. I mean, it's simple, but it's right. It's true.
It's true. Right? Yeah. And so when we talk about categories, like height, how much money brought in, hair,
right.
All those different superficial things that we tend to hear a lot when it comes to why women may not give a guy the opportunity to see.
Right. I would say I baked in some of those superficial things like hair. Hair is something like my mom never wore weave in her life. Like, I was the middle kid who was a little bit too harsh, probably, who she would come home to my hair look okay? And I would be the one that'd be like, nah, them curls not hitting this time. I would be the fool, like, I would tell mom, like, but it was honest. She knew I was going to give her, like, that real, right? And so when I saw my wife sitting under a blow dryer, just like, I made fun of her. She walking around with her rollers in her hair. I'm making fun of her, but I'm like, I'm so in love with this. I'm like, this is what my mama used to do. This is what women who rocking they natural hair. I used to say
back in the day, man, it's nothing like a woman that got her hair wrapped at the end of the night.
Yeah, so it was stimulating to me, and I make fun of her, but I tell her like I tell my wife, when I stop making fun of you is when you should be concerned.
Something's wrong.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, like, do you think she cared about some of those things, like you having hair, or you making a certain amount, or you looking a certain way, or you being jacked up in shape, or?
I don't think though. I think going back to your point that people trade, honesty for height over time. I think she probably went through some of that. So I think she saw that. I think upon meeting my family and just knowing my background and knowing that I'm not rich, but I'm doing okay. Like I'm bringing in a solid income. I'm also not irresponsible in terms of my spending. Like I think I checked enough of those boxes for her to where she was like, okay, I can trust this dude with my money. I can trust him with my livelihood, and he's going to look out for me.
Okay, so getting a little bit deeper, what would you say, or how has intimacy played a role in y'all's relationship, both mentally and physically? And this is in the context of leading into marriage. So before you guys you were trying to figure out, like, is this the person I'm going to marry?
All right, I think intimacy, and I'm going to speak to it. There's different forms of intimacy. I think from a sexual perspective, I guess at a certain point when you enjoy a person like sex is an emotion in a lot of ways, and if in your mind you are emotionally tied to that person, then you feel them in a certain way. So I think for us, things were we didn't. I mean, we didn't wait till marriage. I'm not going to sit here in the front like that, but we waited to a point where I think she was comfortable that I wasn't here just to smash and run. And I was okay with that. I mean, at the end of the day, like the chase for it, I think at the end of the day, you're chasing, like, that's what kind of men are doing theoretically at the beginning of an interaction, right? Like, the general principle is, I tell women, my female friends, is be more concerned when a dude doesn't want to have sex with you, right? Like that tells you a lot more about, like either he's gay or he don't find you attractive. Like those are one of the two things, right? Just because
he's dipping somewhere else.
Right. She knew that I was feeling her physically, that physically she had a part of my mind that other people just didn't occupy. So I think that general feeling and that mindset played a good role. And
how did she know? Not playing. You don't go put all your business out there, but on the mental side of it, because you talked about different parts of it.
Right, man. The mental part of it, I think it goes back to the general concept of love, right? And this feeling that you can't control, right? Like, so in my mind, I think you meet a woman and she just has to occupy a space in your brain that no other person does, right? And if you want to turn it off, but you can't. And so that piece of it, that mental connection, always drove it together. So mental intimacy is that piece of intimacy is weird, right? Like I think it goes back to, you have the physical piece, but then you also have how your minds are wired and how your minds are connected. So I think early on we realized that we were semi-kindred spirits and we had something to build on and we could continue to build that connection. That being said, it was a growth process. Like you don't. I think for her it was a lot easier just because women tend to be more outwardly emotional creatures than men do. But for me, it was a lot of me blocking and holding back how I actually felt before I was able to get to a point where I was willing to be vulnerable for her and with her. And as that feeling started to elevate and to expand within how we interact and how we work, you know that, okay, this is the one. This is, this is a person that I could potentially be married to. This is the person I can have children with, etc. All those important things.
And you touched on a good topic in terms of vulnerability, which has to do with intimacy. But, a lot of times I'll hear women say, well, this guy doesn't talk to me about certain things, or he doesn't share, or he's not vulnerable, And so I think that tends to be a difficult thing for men, just the way that men are raised from a societal standpoint.
Right.
But my response would be, well, what are you doing to set up an environment that allows for him to be vulnerable to you? And so my question is to you, did you feel like your wife set up some type of, I don't want to go as far as say infrastructure, but she did certain things to make you feel comfortable to share and be vulnerable? Or is it just you got there kind of on your own?
No, you have to, I feel like for me, I got there on my own, right? I think just connecting it back to how she was raised, right? She probably only, I think as she stated to me, she's only seen her dad cry once, right? And she didn't see him cry. She just saw his eyes being red after his father passed away. So her image of men was always about stability and outward strength. And that was kind of how I was raised as well. I've seen my dad cry before, but it was always about stability, show strength, even in the hardest of times. Be strong for that woman in your life and for your kids in your life. So it wasn't in her toolkit, or it wasn't something that she would even think to do.
It was an expectation that she had.
To create an infrastructure for allowing a man to be vulnerable. I think for me, what I realized is if I'm not going to share my vulnerability with her, then with who? I think we live in a world now where just with Me Too movement and mental health being, a lot of NBA players coming out talking about, issues and the mental health things they're dealing with, and a lot of people just being very open about things like therapy and things of that sort. It has gotten me to thinking, like, hey, you don't have to be Superman all the time. Sometimes it's okay to just be weak and vulnerable and just share. It's okay to say, maybe I just can't do it tonight. I can't cook tonight. I can't clean the kitchen. I'm just tired. I just want to sit here and chill. Can you hold me down? And once you get to that space and you develop that interaction and connection with the person, that person's gonna be there to pick you up. There have been plenty of
You hope so.
You would hope so, and if that person's not doing it, that should be a red flag for you. They should be there to pick you up. And there have been plenty of days. My wife has she works her ass off. She works with kids that she intentionally works with kids that other people don't want to work with, black and brown kids who come from tough backgrounds, and that's where her heart is. And she goes to work every day, and she works harder and she's underpaid and all those things. And sometimes she comes home and she don't have it. She just like, I just can't do it. I need to sit down. I'm not going to the gym. I'm just not going to do it. I'm good. And it took for me to understand like that if that was her being vulnerable to me, and it took, and in return, I need to do something about that vulnerability. I need to make her life as easy as I can at that moment, so that she can just focus on that vulnerability and improving and correcting in her mind whatever is going on. And she can do that for me too. And it's okay as a man to allow for a woman to do that for you as well. Right? And my career doesn't require me to be in spaces where I'm super stressed a lot, right? And I'm just generally a laid back person. I don't really care about much outside of sports, some good whiskey, my wife, having sex with my wife, all those good things, right? I don't generally care about much outside of that, right? Like if my family is good and my people are good and I got a good meal, I'm going to be all right at the end of the day.
True, but you said something to the extent that like, based off her, I guess, actions or her response to you, that in those moments that she's going to pick you up, carry you and whatnot. And so knowing that, do you feel like everybody's not as smart or can connect the dots to know that they have to do that in order to make their relationship work? Right. But do you feel like there's a responsibility or a role, probably is the better word, for women to create an avenue, whether it is I'm creating an infrastructure to allow you to do it in a safe space or to respond in a way that allows you to keep doing it? Because a lot of times I think, guys are doing things to make sure that the women are good. And I'm not saying that they're wrong by it. But when I talk to women, sometimes I'm like, we need it. Just because we don't respond in the same way and show the emotion doesn't mean that we don't need that.
Right. Yeah, I think the whole purpose of you like creating this podcast, like to really create an avenue for open conversation and different lines of thinking that are not traditional to what we engage, how men and women typically engage, is a starting point. Yeah, because it'd be great, right? Like just the general concept of an infrastructure, like you laid out the words perfectly, an infrastructure for vulnerability is perfect, right? Like women, if they're just given those words and they actually think about, okay, what does this actually mean? Like, is there something that I could be doing to help this man open up to me
and give me things that I want,
right? To give me things that I want, but so that I can also be his rock sometimes, and I can give him things that he wants and needs that he may not be, but based on how he was raised or how society shows how men should be, may not be comfortable sharing this. Yeah, I think this is a starting point. So I think it's something that women should do. But I mean, how would they even know to get that process started? Because it's a brilliant and simple yet obscure concept that you wouldn't think about without being goaded into thinking about it.
That makes sense. That's fair. Hey man, we're all out of time. I want to thank you for coming by. I want to thank everyone that's listening. Please, please, please check out the next episode as I continue to explore vulnerability, talk about the impact of social media in a relationship, look into love languages, and discuss leadership in the household. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at ThinkLoveWife, where you can get updates and submit topics and questions for us to discuss in the future.